Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhart, and I am super excited, as I think I always am, with all my guests that come on the show, but more specifically because my guest today is also in the nonprofit space and in the mental health nonprofit space, which if you've been watching the show for quite some time, you know that I am the founder of Make Mental Health Matter nonprofit, formerly known as BCC Evolution. We did a rebrand this year, which has been a little challenging knowing, are we in this system that or this system that? And it can get, complicated or confusing at times. But that's a whole different show. But the biggest part of the nonprofit is that we really help people get connected into resources. And we have been doing a lot more work in the recovery space because two of the staff members that I currently have are in recovery. And one of them, whom shares their story on one of our commercials, she was that person that really helped me launch into that space. I didn't even realize that I was one of the catalysts for her to get sober. I actually had her on the show when she was in active addiction, not knowing. And then I had her on the show as she is now in recovery, which is really, really cool. And now we employ her, which is even cooler. So she's really helped in the space of recovery and opening my eyes to that community, which I was not as familiar with. Of course, you hear people say, I'm in recovery, and then automatically your thoughts go to, well, what were they using, or how does that look, or I don't even know. Like, there's lots of different thoughts that pop into my head. But what I have experienced is that the community is very supportive of each other, and it has become a space that I feel very comfortable, and I love authentically connecting with people in the community to hear their story and non-judgmentally, really truly listening, because we all have experiences. We all go through a journey. It is part of life. It's part of being human. And some of our journeys are bumpy. Some of our journey is smooth. It just depends on your perspective and the things that you have been through. So that was a really long monologue of what I was trying to say, but I want to introduce my guest without further ado. But let me tell you a little bit about her before she comes up. So her name is Honesty Liller. I hope I said that right. If I didn't, you can correct me. She is a woman in recovery from a substance use disorder since May 27th, 2007, and a certified peer recovery specialist in Virginia. Honesty is the best-selling author of Scattered Pink and is the chief executive officer of the McShin Foundation, a nonprofit accredited peer-to-peer recovery community organization that serves individuals and families with substance use disorders. Recently, Honesty received a certification as a She Recovers professional and is the recipient of the Vernon Johnson Award given by Faces and Voices of Recovery in 2015. She has been featured on Face the Nation, Fox News, CNN, and CBS discussing addiction and recovery in America. And in 2019, she was honored with the Gene C. Harris Community Service Board Award from Hanover County. And WRIC, which is Channel 8 News, had a feature about Honesty for the Richmond's Remarkable Women special in 2020. She has been a field reviewer for, I always say SAMHSA, that's totally not right, but it's SAMHSA, Faces and Voices of Recovery, and CAPRSS. She is a board member of Hanover CARES. McShin has opened their first women and children recovery residence and secured a $2 million grant under Honesty's leadership. She loves to spend time with her husband, 2 children, her 2 dogs, and is a gift that keeps giving. So without further ado, Honesty, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you. I know, listening to that bio, good night. Hi, everyone. I'm Honesty Liller. I am a woman in recovery from substance use disorder since May 27, 2007, like Kelli said. And yeah, recovery rocks, and I'm here to hopefully spread some hope for you guys.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on all of those things. I know sometimes when my bio is read, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. Wait, oh yeah, It's always
Oh,
fun.
totally. Yeah.
So I know I gave a lot of information there, but can you just share a little bit more about your story and your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, I started using drugs at a very young age. I was 12 years old. I never really liked myself. I remember just going through therapy and stuff, really unpacking all of that. Just being, the chubby friend and wanting to fit in different realms as a child. And I just never really did. And it just worked out that way. So I started using, smoking marijuana, weed when I was 12 years old and drinking alcohol just to fit in to the people that I was always hanging out with, like older people from 12 on. So I just wanted people to like me, be a part of the crew. And that really progressed into cocaine and crack when I was 15. And oh gosh, it was just a mess. I mean, it was really fun actually in the beginning, to be honest. I was going to like fish shows and a lot of jam band like concerts, and I just couldn't imagine my 15-year-old son doing all of this right now. But I was just living a life that most 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, 16, whatever, just do not live. I had a lot of freedom as a child. It was a long time ago. Next week I'll be 44. So it was over 20 years ago, but I still, definitely had like things about me that I didn't understand, I guess. So drugs just kind of filled voids and filled, ways of me coping with life and learning how to love myself, which I never really did, just something to kind of put a cloud over it. So I graduated to heroin when I was 17, and I swore I would never use it. My friends, I'd already have 2 friends that overdosed and died. So the epidemic's been around long before the past like 10 years. And, I just honestly never thought I was going to do it. And in order to come down off of the cocaine, you do a downer. And my friend, I was on my mom's front porch. I'll never forget the first time I fell in love with heroin. And I did it, and it just made me numb, and it just made me feel good about myself and not have to have responsibility or anything. I had already graduated from high school a year early when I was 16 and was full blown in a full-time job because I needed money to support my drug habit, because my parents, really didn't have that much money at all. I had 2 sisters at the time, and we were just raised in a not a wealthy environment whatsoever. So I had to pay for my own drugs and, do what I had to do to get money. And then really after age 17, I overdosed at a party, and I got brought back to life with naloxone. And that's like when my family found out I was on drugs. When you go to the hospital, because you're underage, they have to call your parents. And that's when my treatment started for my heroin use. I wouldn't really say it was a complete addiction at 17, just my heroin use and being young. I went to my first 12-step meeting, but everyone was like 100 years old. So I was like, I'm out. I went to like 2, and it just wasn't my jam. And I still was hanging out with the people that were still using. So ultimately, within a couple weeks, I started using again. And it was really a whirlwind for like 9 years until I was 26 of in and out of trying to fix me, because my family didn't understand like what addiction is and that it's something that takes over your whole mind, body, and soul. So I did everything. I did Jesus and got baptized. I did shots in my butt. I did 6 of those implant blockers. I did therapy and I hated it. I love it now, but I hated it back then. And then during this realness of addiction, that's when I started really fully getting addicted to heroin and other opiates, where I was getting dope sick and going through withdrawal. And every single day with a name like Honesty, it was pretty rough because I lied to every single human being that came near me to get drugs, to get money, to get my way, to get a ride, whatever I needed to do. My addictive personality kicked in pretty young before my addiction, but really full blown when I got into the heroin. And it was pretty rough. I mean, it was pretty rough. You can check the book out. It's like 97 pages. You can read it in a day. But it was pretty rough. Once the opiates, they take over your central nervous system. So like it's not just I want to go use and party and have fun. Like that is when I was like 17, 18, but the later years, it just got worse and worse and worse. The crimes, I've committed so many felonies, but I believe in a higher power and I believe in guardian angels. So I feel out of all of those years of me using and committing crimes and doing what I was doing, that something was still protecting me to be where I am today. And during those 9 years of using heroin, I did become pregnant when I was 21 years old with my daughter. So that was it. So I was like, okay, I learned as a young child, the little bit of church I went to, that, children were gifts from God, and, make sure you understand that. Well, so I thought I would stop using, and I was on a methadone clinic trying to get into recovery for the 100th time. And that's where I found out I was pregnant. And I didn't want drugs in my body, because if you're a methadone, you have to fulfill your full term legally. You have to stay on the methadone. So I ran away from the clinic. I started using heroin within days. I used heroin my whole pregnancy. And so my daughter was born substance exposed. It was a pretty rough time in my life. She stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. I definitely was treated poorly. Back then, it's gotten better. It has gotten better in the medical system. But back then it was, you were not a good human being, especially as a woman and as a mom. You're addicted to drugs, but it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be using them. So it was pretty rough. And then the social services came in and mandated me to a methadone clinic. So I was on methadone for 2 years. On paper, I graduated, but I brought in fake urine every week so I can do all kinds of drugs during that time. I never knew what real recovery was. No one throughout all of those years, I never knew the authenticity of peer-to-peer delivered services and recovery. There just wasn't many options back then. And so finally, when I was, I guess, 25, I went away to treatment, or it was a recovery program. And my daughter was 4, left her with my mom. And over the payphone, I left her father over the payphone. We were together for 6 pretty miserable, long, exhausting. I always called him my partner in crime, because all we did was steal and try to get money for drugs. So I left him, and then at this 28-day program, I fell in lust with another man immediately, as you do in rehab. And, everything went pretty good when I got home after the 28 days. I'm not a big firm believer on a 28-day program. The longevity of recovery is being absorbed in the recovery community. So when I got home after the 28 days, my car, my job, my daughter, and my apartment were all waiting for me. It's here's your life back. Okay, you're better. Here's 28 days. They gave me a piece of paper. They said to go to 12-step meetings, which I did. I went to 12-step meetings. I got a sponsor. I got a home group. But the boy that I met in this place wanted to move down here with me. And I told my sponsor, and she was like, that's not a good idea. What I heard was that was great. And yes, so he moved down here, and we used for a year together. And it was my worst year out of the 14 years of using. I did stuff as a woman that he still don't even know about. And as a mom, the crimes that we committed with Destiny in the back of the car, and the danger I put that child in, it was pretty rough. I mean, it's a day to day. So it's not when you're addicted to opiates, at least is my experience, it's not like you can just use in the morning and you're good for a few days. You have to use all day long. So you use, and then while you're using, you're figuring out a scheme or what to do to use in like 6 or 7 or 8 more hours. So it's literally like 5 full-time jobs. And it's very, very exhausting. And then having a child in the mix, it was just dragging her all around. I mean, we've worked through all of that. She's 22 now and life is good, but that is something that I carry with me for the rest of my life. I'm not really shameful anymore about it at all. It's more of sometimes I'm like, tag, but the reality of it is it's made me a stronger mom and wife and woman in general of the stuff and the trials that I went through. And then when I was 26, I found McShin. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And so a couple of things popped into my head as you were talking. And 12, right? I could not imagine, but I also think about when I was younger too. And I was like, how old was I? Like the first time I drank, and I have a 9-year-old, and I'm just like, no, right? Like in my brain now as mom, I'm like, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. Right. But then we reflect back to our age when we were younger, and there's a lot to your story. And I just appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing all of that, because there was a lot of key components that you talked about too, is you never really understood recovery, right? Like, what did recovery mean? Because when they put you just in methadone clinics, it's like, okay, so you put me on this other substance to, counteract this substance, but then it doesn't really create that supportive recovery space. And I know that it has gotten better over time, and now we're actually having real conversations about these things versus just putting a band-aid fix on it. But then also, like you just said, is like adding that baby into the mix, and then you're still active addiction and kind of fluctuating in and out of it, and then also putting your child in harm's way. But that was life, right? Like, that's how life was at those moments. And so thank you again for sharing all of that. And the question I think that is popping into my head, I'm like, where do I go? I have a couple questions popping in, but I guess the first question that I have is with the child, so with your daughter, and knowing that you guys have worked through all of the things, I know since you were using during that time, did she or has she had any like challenges or anything that has come up as related to that?
So no, like addicted to drugs or anything. No. I stopped using when she was 5. So like I did join McShin and 12-step saved my life. So I was in a 12-step program for like the first 13 years of my recovery. I do a ton of different stuff now, but so I made my amends with her. We talked it over. She was 12 years old, I think, by the time I got to her, because she was my last one on my amends list. Because I was like, it was just a lot. It was heavy. It was just, she was so young still. She was my age when I made amends to her. So like she just remembers from what she tells me, even now, like she tells me a ton, and some of the stuff I don't even want to know, but we just have a very good relationship. And I didn't have that with my mother. So it's really cool. But she just said she remembered like drug dealers coming up to the car. And she knows I pawned her stuff. She'll make jokes about it, because it's in my book. So my husband, which is the guy that I met in rehab, we ended up getting married. We've been together for like 19 years. So we're like that 1% that's out there, America. But they both read my book before I published it, because there's a lot of heavy stuff really about my husband, but also her. So she'll joke like, oh, go pawn my Dora the Explorer TV, so like, and I did, but she'll joke about like stuff. And she's been raised in this environment ever since I got her back. Like I started working at McShin. So she's literally been raised in the recovery environment. She's 20, almost 23. So I can't say that she doesn't drink alcohol. But I can honestly say that she's nothing, even a smidgen, where I was at all. So I think raising our children in this environment, and the more you bust the bubble. So parents ask me all the time, my son's on a travel baseball team. So they're like, will you talk to our sons about fentanyl? And like, because they just know we're so open, like, about everything. So it's really important. And I educate parents all the time on just have a conversation, not you're going to get punished and your phone's getting taken away. It's more of like, let's talk about what's going on in our communities and how to hopefully prevent them from using or taking a fentanyl pill. But also like how they, because my daughter has helped a bunch of people throughout all of these years. They've either come to McShin or she was in the place that I am on the board. It's a Hanover Teen CARES too. So it's like a drug and alcohol prevention in the town that I'm in. And she was in that for like 3 years in her high school years. So no, I mean, so far so good.
Nice. Yeah. And so we have to go to our quick first sponsor break, but
Okay.
when we come back, I had another question pop in my head, so we'll be right back after this quick sponsor break.
Of course.
I lost my middle sister, Kelli, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
My story, all of it isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction. And because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here. And if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
Curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community, it is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be joining the Make Mental Health Matter show now, thank you for tuning in, but make sure you go back, because there was so much goodness that Honesty shared with us, especially with her journey through substance use and into recovery. One thing that you said before we went to the break, you talked about having open conversations with your kids. And I definitely am in that space also. I have my 9-year-old. We have had probably more conversations than I ever imagined that we would have in his short 9 years. But I have also had people say, why would you talk to him about those things? And my response is, I'm an open book, and I want him to know that I'm a safe place for him to come and share whatever is going on. And I also know that it is important. I mean, like gun safety, we've talked about drugs, we've talked about fentanyl, we've talked about He knows all the things that I do with my nonprofit. He knows how my sister died and all those things, right? Like we have these open conversations. And recently I have been starting to take him with me to the events that we do. We've done Pride, we've done recovery rallies, we have done suicide prevention rallies, and so many other things, right? He loves to help because we have a spinny wheel too. But I think that it's so important for us to have open, transparent conversations with our kids, because if they're not getting it from us, they're gonna hear it from somebody else.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I said, yeah, my kids have been a part of the recovery community. Their dad is in recovery. And they've seen a lot here. I mean, they have seen a lot. Like McShin, they've heard some F-bombs, but it's much better than going to places where I was getting drugs with Destiny. They know when people go to jail, they're like, oh, someone used. They get all understand our events. We've had a million events since Destiny's been back in my life and since Wyatt's been born. So they come to all of the events. Yeah, we have a huge, Wyatt didn't come, but I was dressed up because we have a huge sober space at the huge Virginia Pride Fest. And I dressed all up and everything. He's like, you going to Pride Fest? I was like, yeah. So it's just important, like sober space is what we call it. But like, it does suck on the other end being so open. So the catalyst to that would be this, like my daughter's been to a funeral with me. They know when people pass away because this is my life. This isn't just a job. This is my full-blown career that goes into my home. I don't believe in balance. Like we try to balance job, career, mom, wife, baseball, like whatever. My personal jam is just trying to give the best that's why my phone is off right now, like to the best of my attention that what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm not a good balance speaker at all because I just don't believe in it anymore. But so for him to see all of this and my kids to be raised in a recovery environment, it has been beautiful. But the other end, so just for example, like my son, he's a travel baseball player. So he connects to the younger guys that are in McShin that are baseball players that have been injured, like most, get on opiates, addicted to other opiates and heroin, come to the McShin Foundation. Thousands of those stories have walked through this door. Well, 2 of them have died. So the first one he's actually up here. So it was 2 years ago, and I'll never forget telling my son. And it broke it. He pulled the blanket over him, and he was probably 12 or 13 at the time, cried his eyes out. I was like, that's when me and my husband like really made a decision of like him not coming up here as much anymore. And he hasn't. I mean, he's super busy with baseball anyway, but so he'll come to the events, but like hanging out here after school and stuff. It's just, we had to have a family. Well, me and my husband, had to have a conversation because that was heavy. That was really heavy as a mom to feel his energy and it broke my heart like in half. And I'll probably cry right now more than anything. But so it broke my heart. It does show the humanism of raising your children in this environment because I wasn't taught about death either as a child. My first death, I think it was like an aunt that I barely even knew. My death was when I was 16, 17 and my friends were dying of heroin overdoses. So that's like when I was introduced to death. So it's a big part of life is death. So it's important to share with your children about people in our lives that have passed away. And then, so just this past year, again, some of the guys get super close because of my husband as well and become friends. And he overdosed, this fellow overdosed. He's right here on my wall and he overdosed and died in November. And we had a couple guys come over for Thanksgiving because that's what we do sometimes that they don't have somewhere to go. So I was scared they were going to, because he had just passed. So I was scared they were going to say something and then there'd be a whole thing like at dinner. So I told him, and I'll never forget, and he's huge. He's like a foot taller than me now, a baseball player. And he just sat there and it hit him. And then he just started crying. So me and my daughter, it was a whole thing. Man, my daughter held him. So it is a tough part too. Like, it's beautiful. They see so many lives. They get connected with the children that they've been raised with around here. But the other end of it is like, I don't know what I'm doing half the time as a parent. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? I tell everyone, being a parent's the hardest thing I've ever done in drug addiction, recovery. Nothing's harder than being two humans, real model, like nothing. So there is just to let you know, there is like the hard part of it, but integrating them into a life, in recovery and seeing all the love, that's worth it, in itself too.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it can get so heavy. And then knowing, I actually, on a former guest, we were talking about there's two things in life that we always know, right? Like, we're born and we'll die. And we have to like know that. And I actually, as you talk about that, I remember several conversations that I've had with my son because he got really, really curious about death. And I was like, where is this coming from? And then I was like, how do I explain? And I even was like, I'm not really sure how to answer these questions. And then I'm like, how do I put this in a way that's age appropriate? But then I'm like, why am I just not having the conversations? Right. But yes, it becomes a hard part of the conversation because especially as I talk, it's about, suicide and other, I also talk about when people die from overdose as suicide because they are either slowly killing themselves or they accidentally kill themselves. So I think that being able to have the conversations with your children is important. And then also, I know you mentioned about the fentanyl with it, which is a crisis today. And they have to be, we as parents have to be aware of it. We can't just pretend that it's not happening. We've got to have those conversations so that they know, so they're not taking something that could potentially kill them, or you never know what's going to happen. And so I think having that honesty and transparency is important as we talk about parenting. But yes, it is it's one of those big challenges, that we go through in life, and it's bigger than anything else that we do, but definitely rewarding in the end for sure.
Yeah. And it's wild how much times have just changed, and these pills and these pill parties and just your drink. Like, make sure you carry. I say all this, especially to my daughter, because she's, girls are just different than boys, like, make sure if you're out somewhere, like, you hold, even if it's a bottle of water, like, hold your drink close tight to you. Like, you just don't know anymore. And this, like, the accidental overdoses that happen every single day. They don't even know what they're taking half the time. Their friend says, take this, and their friend might have a regular pill, and somehow a fentanyl pill got with the batch, and this person is now overdosing or has passed away. And it's harder for these children to come back. We have so many stories here of people that have been revived with naloxone, like in one overdose, like 7, 8, 9 times. Because it's fentanyl. At least here in Virginia and Richmond, it's mainly just fentanyl. There's no, it's barely a percentage of heroin anymore. So yeah, educating your children, not just don't use that. That's just not my jam either. It's more of understanding what it looks like, what it's going to do to you. I asked him the other day, I was like, you want naloxone for your backpack? And he's like, sure. So I'm going to train him and show him how to use it, but I need to give him that and just put it in his backpack, because you just never know what's happening in the schools. I hear a lot that goes on from him and from others. So it's just a scary world. It's not like it used to be. I didn't think I was going to get addicted to heroin when all my friends were using it either. And I did. But there was so much more going on in my life than my kids have never had to see. They've been raised in a completely different environment. And it's just been different, being in recovery and raising your kids in it. It's a different world for sure.
Yeah. And I do, so another question is coming into my head, but we have to go to our quick last sponsored break, and then we'll be right back.
Okay, cool.
Hello, this is Steve Ramona with the TV show Together We Serve, Fridays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on E360 TV. Together We Serve.
Hi, I'm Ann Scotland, the host of Global Socialpreneurs. Join the experts, 12 p.m. EST on the Fresh Takes TV network for the best advice on social entrepreneurship. Join us here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back again.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about children and fentanyl crisis, and you had mentioned naloxone, which also, if you aren't familiar, it is Narcan. So Narcan and naloxone are the same thing. But we also, in Colorado, that's where I'm at, we have had an epidemic that is happening, and they are putting Narcan or naloxone in all of the high schools because we've had overdose happen, which I think is, I mean, it blows my mind. But we also, within my nonprofit, we've started doing the fentanyl awareness and Narcan training. We just started that a few months ago, and we're going to continue that. We got a bunch of people trained in how to train, so that we can really bring that kind of all around for people who don't know how to use it. Because I know you just said that you're going to teach your son how to use it. And I think that's an important part of the conversation too, is that drugs now are so potent that you have to use multiple naloxone or Narcan up the nose, or if you have or happen to have a trained first responder that has the drips or whatever you call them. But I think it's important for people to know that there's trainings out there that you can understand how to administer. And then even, I know in our mental health first aid class, we teach the recovery position. So how to put them in a position so that you can actually administer, and it is life-saving.
Yeah, that's important because some are up the nose, yes, some are the thigh. You know, it's really to understand and how to hold the head and just a little bit of everything instead of just panicked and do, you know, I mean, for the most part, I still think it would work, but it's also about the breathing and leaving them on the side, especially, unfortunately, people leave people and they try to revive them because they're scared. They're addicted to, and they're scared, and they leave someone. So the more education out there, the better, which is a ton now. You can watch it on YouTube now. So
yeah. And there's definitely, I mean, so my question that's popping into my head, I was like, where's my brain going? I want to learn more about McShin and what you guys do specifically.
Okay, sure. So like I said, I went through McShin in May of 2007. I was just going to detox and leave. But something happened, magic happened in the recovery house with other women like me. It's that authentic peer-to-peer connection of individuals that have lived experience with addiction and lived experience with recovery. So, I mean, it was wild back then. It's not like it is now. It was just back then, it was just barely any women staying in recovery. Over 17 years ago, there wasn't that many women. They had I guess we had one female house and 2 male houses at the time. There was no female staff here. And after 5 months of living here, I started slowly getting my life back. I got my daughter back when I moved out. I lived with my sister till I had a year in recovery. And then me and the boy at the time, which is now my husband, we got an apartment with my daughter. So I was just trying to give back to the organization, you know, throughout all my addiction. I picked up like some things in all the jobs that I got fired from, or I was dope sick and left. So just like computer skills and stuff like that. So McShin probably had like $100,000 a year budget when I got here. It was just the founder and a couple other staff, and the 3 houses. So now, fast forward all these years later, we have 15 recovery certified through VAR and NAR recovery houses. We have about 152 beds between all of those houses. So they live in actual homes. They don't live here. I'm in my office now at the recovery center. We have this recovery center that's open 365 days a week. We have paid staff that's here 7 days a week. And 365 a week, 365 a year. And all of our team are in recovery from substance use disorder. So all of our staff, most of our interns, and most of our board of directors is either in recovery or they have been affected by recovery where they've lost a loved one, or their loved one's currently still using. So it's really big to have that authenticity piece for us because we're the only accredited recovery community organization in the state of Virginia by a national body called CAPRSS. So we're accredited by a national body. We have our board of directors and then me and Jesse, our COO, and yada, yada, yada. I love creating an atmosphere for those that are in recovery, specifically our alumni, to get employed. So we probably 89% of our staff are alumni of our housing program, which is really cool. What else? Oh, we have jail programs. So that's one of our biggest niche. So we're in 3 local jails, but 2 of them is covered by SAMHSA, like you said earlier, SAMHSA grant. So we go into institutions during the weekdays. Not me, I don't do it as much as anymore because I don't have the time, but our team, we have paid dedicated staff that goes into these institutions. We have a whole curriculum developed for those that are incarcerated. And then the hope is for them to come out directly from incarceration to our housing. And our podcast, which is Getting the Herd, HERD, we're really big about the herd, staying in the herd together because the buffalo that leaves the herd usually gets eaten by a coyote. We have a live podcast in the local Henrico jail every Tuesday night. So check that out, Getting the Herd podcast. But the live one is really cool because the sheriff loves us and we get to go in there and deliver that for free to them for now. And our podcast goes into 767, the last I checked, jails across the United States. So when you're incarcerated, if you're fortunate enough, you have those. They're now tablets they have for those that are incarcerated. So we give away all of our videos to the 2 companies that manage that. So it's pretty cool. We get people from all over the United States to come live here because they saw us on the tablets. I don't know. It's a big thing. So our reach is humongous. Over 1 million some views for that. And then the Women and Children's House. So we opened it. We named it Destiny House after my daughter. So we opened it in April of 2023. I've been wanting to do it forever. And I just kind of kept being told, find the money, find the money. There's nothing like it here in Richmond as far as like a home. There's like facilities that women and children can go to for SUD. But this is a house 2 blocks away here from our recovery center. Right now it's housing 4 moms and they both have custody of 1 child apiece. So the child can be 0, which the mom is pregnant, up to 6 years old. So that's just kind of what we're doing for right now. We don't want a mix of teenage and little kids or anything by any means. It's been a beautiful, challenging experience. The need has been there forever. I was sick of moms calling here. Do you have this house? And we've been saying no for years. So it's been really successful. Like I said, the Guardian Angels, when we opened it a month later, I got a $112,000 grant. So the moms have not had to pay a thing unless they're Starbucks or whatever. But as far as anything for the home, diapers, wipes, we have a great partnership in the community for those. The kids' clothes, all of that, we pay for all of that through that grant. So that's been very successful. And then that's my job until we hire this new position. That's my job, is raising money constantly, specifically for that house, because we never want the mom. We do have bed fee here, so it's pay or mix. So, but this house, we don't ever want that to happen. But we do have like regular recovery residences. After they leave our 28-day program, they move right into one of those houses. So that's, again, like that longevity of recovery. But now we're about $3.3 million budget with all of our programming and houses. And it takes a lot of money to keep these beds open and these houses up to par. You can imagine your own house, the little things. So that's 15 of them that we manage and have staff that maintenance, and just, it's a lot to run this machine. But it's so needed. And I really thought, I don't even know, 10 years ago that I didn't think I would be employed. I just thought eventually, this would all the money being, brought down from the federal government now. And, we would be out of business because people would be healing. But unfortunately now it's even worse with the fentanyl crisis. So it just blows my mind how long I've been doing this and made a career out of my heroin addiction.
Yeah, that's so amazing. So I just had a thought that popped into my head. You and I have actually connected in the past. It was,
Oh, wow.
yeah, before you were introduced to me to come on my show, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Oh, cool.
So I would love for you to just share, because we're coming to the end.
Okay, sure.
Any final thoughts that you have, and then just tell the audience where they can find you and just learn more about McShin.
Sure. If you have a loved one out there that's struggling, please don't give up on them. There's always hope and there's always help. You can find us at McShin.org, MCSHI. Yep, there you go. We're all over Facebook, McShin Foundation, Instagram, TikTok. We're stepping our game up on that. And then just our phone number, 804-249-1845. So our team answers that phone pretty much around the clock, our admissions team. So yeah, that's pretty much how you find us.
Awesome. And for those of you that are listening, it's mcshin.org. And you can go to the website, you can call. And I just so appreciate you coming on, sharing your experience, being vulnerable, and then doing the work that you do now. It is so needed. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you.
And back at you. Thank you for all that you do and your lived experience. The stuff that we go through, you don't know why we're going through it at the time, but on the other end, we're helping people. So I truly believe that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, y'all, that was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. I have themes that happen throughout these shows. The prior guest, we were talking about her being in recovery, and then now we have a nonprofit organization that is in the recovery space in Virginia. So if you need any support, any help, please reach out, because it's never too early or too late to ask for help. And if you ever need any additional information, I'll scroll it down at the bottom, but we also have our trusted resource hub that we connect people into resources, and it's on the makementalhealthmatter.org website. You can click on resources and it'll take you into trusted resources, or if you're watching this, you can see it scroll on the bottom. So no matter what you do, make sure you come back next week, because I have more incredible, I know it just keeps getting better and better, and there's more information, and really the whole point of this is to bring people and places and resources to you as the audience, because again, we have so many in the United States. We just oftentimes don't know where to go, who to talk to, how to get through. And the coolest part about all my guests is that they have a story, they have a journey, which led them into this place of where they are today. And they are out there helping people and giving hope to so many people. So no matter what you do, I will see you back here next week. Bye, y'all. Thank you.